Alrighty, I think we're going to go ahead and start here. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining our webinar, Paving a Path Forward with JD Edwards and Oracle Cloud. My name is Brianna Bach. I'm a part of the marketing team here at Terillium, and I'm going to be your host today. As we get started, I wanted to review how you can participate in today's web event. You should see an example of the GoToWebinar dashboard. And if you want to interact with us and ask questions, you should see a little question box down there. Just submit all your questions there. And at the end, we will have a Q&A session, and we will gather all those questions and answer them then. And now I'm going to pass it off to Matt Lesueur, our Vice President of Sales.
Thanks, Brianna. Welcome, everybody. Go through some quick intros. We've got Angela Einhart from Oracle. Angela's been with JD Edwards Oracle for over 20 years. As I went through her LinkedIn page, I tried to add up all the numbers. So I think it's over 20. We've got Shane Eisenhower, who leads our Oracle Cloud practice. Shane has been working with JD Edwards in Cloud for well over 22 years. So welcome, Shane. And then Brian Surface, who he's only got about 18 years of JD Edwards in Cloud experience. So he's the baby of the group. And I've been with Terillium for over 21 years. So appreciate everybody joining today, and we'll kind of dive right into it. So what we plan to cover today, we're going to have Angela kind of take us through product overview and roadmap updates for JD Edwards, and then talk a little bit about considerations as you look at your ERP roadmap and kind of where you're going as an organization. Then we'll have Shane jump in and cover some of the Oracle Fusion Cloud components, right? Where's the product at today? As you know, with the update schedules, it's evolving much faster than legacy ERP applications are able to. So he'll bring us up to speed on where things are at from a functional perspective, and then we'll have Brian kind of do the same from a technical perspective. And what these guys are going to be able to do is really relate it back to JD Edwards, because of their history in JD Edwards, and then since they've been in the cloud for the last 5-6 years, they'll kind of correlate the two together to help you understand how they compare. And then we'll have Shane talk through a couple of customer success stories of JD Edwards to cloud that we think are relevant to talk about. And then we'll talk a little bit about where we go from here. Shane? But I do have to fit in a quick commercial, so I'm going to give a real quick Terillium overview first before we get into the meat of the presentation. So we like to consider ourselves, right, all we do is Oracle. And when I say that, right, we've been around for 27 years. So we've got a great legacy in JD Edwards. You know, about 9 years ago, I guess it is, we started getting into the cloud. And then also about 7 years ago, we started up our NetSuite practice. All we do is Oracle, and all we do is ERP. So we're very focused in what we do. Size, we're a little over 180 consultants. And the point of this slide is really, these are our full-time W-2 employees. They're not a bunch of subcontractors out there operating under their own methodology. We all roll up to the same owner and the same president, and we all work under the same methodology. Over that 27-year period, as we've calculated, we've worked with well over 700 customers on their ERP journeys, whether that's JD Edwards, Cloud, NetSuite. So we've worked with a lot of different industries across the entire country and on a global basis. With that, I will hand it off to Angela.
Okay. So let me just share my screen really quickly. And so hopefully now you're seeing my title slide. All right, so let me go ahead and jump in and get going. So first, I just want to thank Terillium for inviting me to be here today. You know, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a longtime JD Edwards person. It's been actually 27 years for me too. And so I've recently started working more and more with the Oracle Fusion ERP Cloud. So I'm glad to be here today to act hopefully as a trusted advisor to you. Since I have experience on both sides, I can do some translation for, what does something mean in JD Edwards and what does something mean in Fusion. And so I'm going to refer as a shorthand to Fusion, which is the SaaS-based ERP solution that is now available from Oracle. So it's the ERP in the cloud. And so you took the step to attend this webinar for a reason. You're looking for something. And so my goal is, to be here to help you find what you're looking for. And I presume it's information about Oracle's investments and what it means for a JD Edwards customer. So in terms of JD Edwards, the strategy and roadmap, specifically to JD Edwards, there's a lot of resources available to you where you can find out more about that. But if you're considering about what you want to do next with JD Edwards, you can find a lot of answers. But one area that might be a little bit more mysterious to you or elusive at this point is Fusion and what does it really mean? And so the purpose of today's session for me is to really help you understand what Fusion means, what is it, and what is it to you as an option going forward. And especially, I want to speak to the customers who are running World or are on an older version of Enterprise One. And so let me click through this build. And again, you're attending this session today because you're looking for something, whether you're in the middle of some short-term planning, what am I going to do, in the next 6 weeks? What am I going to do in the next 2 years? But in any case, I'd like to walk you through these 3 different paths that you have at this point to consider. Not all of these paths are created equal. There's a lot to take into consideration. And so after I lay this out, I'm actually going to talk about what are some of those strategies you can use to think about what makes the most sense for you. And so I'll go from left to right. So starting with, option number 1, you can modernize with what's called Oracle Cloud Infrastructure and JD Edwards itself as your digital platform. So in this case, you're moving your data center over into the cloud, and you're using Oracle's cloud infrastructure to run your JD Edwards applications. So this is, what I was referring to before is, there's still ongoing investment going on in JD Edwards. What that investment is and what the strategy is, there's a lot of information available related to that. So that's not what I'm going to get into the details of today. What I want to talk about more are 2 other paths that you have available to take right now. One of them is to actually complement JD Edwards with Oracle Fusion Cloud applications, different components of that. The third option is you could fully migrate your ERP solution to Oracle Fusion ERP. So just in terms of what do we see other customers doing right now, I would say, we are seeing a lot of customers adopt Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. We're also seeing a lot of customers adopting different components of Oracle Cloud, Oracle Fusion Cloud. One of the most popular things is Enterprise Performance Management. So in that case, you're still running JD Edwards, hopefully on something current like 9.2, and then you're integrating it with Enterprise Performance Management in the cloud. And so what are the types of things you could do with EPM as the acronym? Is planning and budgeting. You got multiple instances, not just of JD Edwards. If you've got instances of other ERPs, you can do that financial consolidation and close, planning and budgeting, again, across multiple ERP solutions. That's one of the things that makes the EPM very attractive to JD Edwards customers, is the ability to go across, different ERP solutions. Something similar to that is, customer experience, where we've got a lot of customer all the customer relationship management applications you would see, like Salesforce automation, service, and support. We've got a lot of customers who integrate with that. We've also got a lot of JD Edwards customers who integrate with human capital management, different components there. So again, this is, definitely an option for you if you want to look at innovating someplace around the edge. Keep your core JD Edwards for various reasons. That might be the best path for you. You could also look at complementing. Something that's a little bit more rare right now, we're not seeing as much momentum, but it's definitely increasing, is JD Edwards customers migrating to Fusion and running their ERP in the cloud. So, just again to kind of tie this back to those customers who are either running World or they're running an older version of Enterprise One, is you have to think about the evolution of ERP in general and where it's at today. If you're running World, if you're running an older version, you can think of it as you're running ERP 1.0. It's at a point where maybe you can't apply updates. There aren't as many updates coming if you're on an unsupported release. There are certain things you just can't do. You're stuck. If you think about where we are today, we're at like ERP 5.0. Things have evolved a great deal, and so if you're thinking about making some kind of a change, you're looking at a big decision, and you're looking at a big effort. So at that point, you've really got to think about, do I upgrade JD Edwards? Do I migrate to Enterprise One, or do I move to Fusion? If you're really at one of these ERP 1.0 situations, I would really encourage looking at migrating to Fusion ERP because of some of the benefits that you've got on that side. So now that we've kind of talked about that, I do want to go back and take a look at the JD Edwards, the E1 roadmap. We're also going to look at the World roadmap as well. So you've probably seen this slide before. The key point here is that you're safe running Enterprise One. I'm not trying to come across that you've got to move to Fusion or anything like that at all. But just want to make you aware of the current time frame. Premier support, there are different levels of support. So there's Premier, Extended, and Sustaining. Premier support is available for the 9.2 release until 2032. So you've got a very long time to have that highest level of support. Extended support will be ongoing. Now, if you've been paying attention, if you've been hearing this from us, you'll know that each year we push it out. I think we started with 2030. Then we came to the next year and we said, no, it's going to be 2031. Now it's going to be 2032. So I just want to emphasize that you can feel secure in your investment in 9.2 and what it can do for you going forward. Now, World, I want to make sure that all the World customers get this message across, is that World is in a different situation. We have announced that the end of extended support is actually in 2025. So that leaves you in a different situation. And you've really got to start making some plans today. And again, thinking about this concept of ERP 1.0 versus where we're at now, where it's more like 5.0, and moving yourself into some more modern type of environment. And at this point, do not expect that we're going to extend this 2025 date. Like I was talking about for Enterprise One, where that date keeps getting extended every year, that is not the expectation you should have when it comes to World. Okay, so I'm going to transition now, and I'm also going to take a bit of a step back, and there we go. Just talk a little bit more generally about what's the difference. What we keep talking about cloud and what's the difference, and it's really going to, some of this relates to the infrastructure, the Oracle Cloud infrastructure I was talking about. A lot of it also just really applies to software as a service or SaaS. And so there's certain, characteristics, that we think of in For traditional deployments of ERP, there's also now the cloud or digital platform deployment of an ERP. And so traditionally, the solution is located on your own servers behind your firewall in your own data center. From a cloud standpoint, the solution is actually located somewhere else, and it's accessed via the internet. Another characteristic is that you purchase licenses up front, and it's a perpetual license. The difference in the cloud is that you pay a subscription fee. You've got a term of a contract for maybe 3 years, or it could be more, and you pay that subscription over time. And so it's just a different financing model that you can think about. The other element is you own and maintain the hardware yourself versus the vendor taking care of that for you. And that's that infrastructure as a service model. And this is what OCI or Oracle Cloud Infrastructure would be. The other thing is, when you're deploying the solution to your own servers, your own hardware, then you're providing the technical support, you're doing the patching, you're applying the updates. In a cloud environment, the vendor actually takes care of that for you. And also, from a Fusion ERP standpoint, you get quarterly updates, and those come automatically. If you compare that to, Enterprise One, we've got quarterly updates that come out, but it's up to you when you apply those, but you've also got to do the work to get those applied. And then the last piece is, from a traditional standpoint, the software gets delivered to you. It kind of gets thrown over the wall. And a cloud environment, it gets provisioned to you. You get a login. You log in and you start to configure, and then you add your users and you start using it from that point. So those are, some of the differences between cloud deployment and what we've seen traditionally, on-premise. Now, I would say there's some characteristics on the cloud and digital platform side that are true for, JD Edwards. I pointed out one that, Enterprise One has quarterly releases. And so in any case, no matter kind of which path that you take, I would encourage you to start to develop a cloud mindset. And, what does that mean? And, there's a set of cloud behaviors, there's a set of cloud characteristics. And so some of these behaviors include keeping code current, enabling process automation, managing by exception through a user experience, avoiding customizations, eliminating customizations, and being more data-driven. And so those are the behaviors that no matter what you do, I would encourage you to start thinking about those things. But at the same time, look at the solution you're running, look at what JD Edwards can do, look at what Fusion can do in terms of these cloud characteristics. This is what you should now expect from an ERP solution. And so continuous adoption, being able to take updates quarterly, to take advantage of the investments that are being made. And you do that by eliminating customizations, getting yourself as vanilla as possible. And process automation, mapping to, I don't call it digital transformation anymore, it's digital acceleration. With how fast, companies and technology has been able to pivot around the pandemic, it's just been amazing. And I think we've proven to ourselves that we can get over these humps and really implement different types of digital experiences. And then, the other thing to expect from the cloud is a modern user experience, as well as the modern best practices, so that you can avoid those costly, customizations. And then also intelligent applications. So again, these are behaviors I would encourage you to start getting implemented, and different characteristics of a solution, to be looking for and to take advantage of. So I'm just going to move a little bit and talk some more about Oracle Fusion applications themselves. And what is it all about? Well, it's a full suite of ERP applications. It is a bit broader than what JD Edwards provides. It actually has some things that you might go to a partner for, like optical character recognition in your AP automation process, that is built into Fusion. There are other things like that. So it's really a full, full ERP with everything that you would need from finance all the way to, customer experience, human resources. The other thing you may not know about Fusion and Oracle Cloud ERP is that it's actually been around for about 10 years and it's matured quite a bit. We've got over 8,000 customers at this point. And also for years now, we've been the leader in terms of Gartner's Magic Quadrant in different MQs that they publish. We continue to be the leader. So it's really a proven solution, and something that you should feel comfortable looking at and knowing that you can be happy with that decision. But with that, I'm going to leave you with this more of a strategic discussion here. So I've laid out a lot of great options for you. You can continue with JD Edwards. You can look at migrating to Fusion. You can look at integrating with different components of Fusion. But okay, Angela, that's fantastic. But how do I figure out what's right for me? And the first thing I want to make sure that you look at is leveraging a partner like Terillium, and especially look for a partner who understands JD Edwards and also understands cloud and Fusion, because that's where we're seeing the most success, and we're seeing a lot of partners kind of moving into this business like Terillium. So and at this point they're certainly one of the most proven partners that we've got. So again, just want to shout out to them a little bit for being a great partner in this. And so just briefly, this could be a very long conversation. I could do a whole webinar just talking about how all these paths aren't created equal, what are the factors that drive these different switching costs, and we put them into these 3 C's, and these are really the things that drive complexity. And so as an example, the degree to which you've got customizations or looking at your Chemleys. Content is, how much of the ERP solution are you using? Are you looking at just financials? That's simpler. It's less complex than looking at, everything across HCM, supply chain, and financials, and, the core ERP components. Culture is really important. And this gets back to me talking about that cloud mindset. And where does your organization sit? Is the skill set within your organization really limited to maintaining JD Edwards? Do you have other SaaS solutions that you might be using? So you've kind of got some of that experience. Do you have some more like Python knowledge? Do you have modern user experience is implemented? That gets to your culture. And so, there's varying degrees there, and there's things that, drive these complexity. I mentioned custom code, the number of divisions that are running differently. How many instances do you have? And how many of these third-party integrations have you got? These are just some of those, examples of those drivers. So what are some strategies that you can use to de-risk? And so I already talked about leveraging a strong partner. You can look at things like deploying by business unit, using a phased approach. And so again, this could be a very big discussion. That's why I can't cover it in just one slide and just in 30 seconds. And this is really where you can engage a partner. You can reach out to me, and we can have a conversation as well. So I want to wrap it up by just sharing that we do have, several resources on Learn JDE. So if you find the cloud section, you'll find different things that are, just a general conversation for you around, what is cloud? What are the things I should consider? Then we've got some other things that are more like cloud best practice types of documents that we've published. And then there's also integration best practices. I talked a lot about enterprise performance management, or EPM. Because we're seeing so many customers adopt it, we actually did a proof of concept integration in-house, and we've published a best practices document and set of resources around that. So this is something you can leverage whether you're considering EPM as a solution, or you've already implemented it and want to see what our approach was. You can find those things there as well. So I covered a lot, and I'll just go ahead and wrap it up really quick. That no matter your situation, start thinking about what your options are today. You've got different options available to you that are all good. Looking at moving forward with JD Edwards as your key digital platform, or looking at Fusion Cloud applications. Want to encourage you to consider that as well, because I think it's less understood within the JD Edwards install base. But also leverage some of the resources that we've published out on Learn JDE, and certainly use a partner to help you get through those de-risk strategies, as well as just talking about your strategy in general. So thanks everybody for listening to me today. I'm going to hand it back over to Shane, and we'll be back at the end for questions and answers. So
thank you, Angela.
Going to find you in the attendee list. There you go.
All right. Well, so before I start digging in on a little bit of a functional comparison, a large part of my career, as Matt mentioned, I've been a JDE guy, and personally have implemented distribution, manufacturing, transportation, and warehousing. And as I looked through the list today, I actually see a few customers where I was actually the consultant on their project. So what my hope is today is to let you walk away with some differences between World and E1 and Cloud in some specific areas. And before I go more granular, at a macro level, JD Edwards and Cloud, and when I say Cloud, I mean Oracle, Fusion, Cloud. There's overlap in ERP, there's overlap in SCM. You can make a small argument for there's an overlap in HCM, but really what you see with Cloud is, number one, it's much more comprehensive, and depending on the needs of your business in terms of breadth, there's a lot more there where you typically see a lot of third parties within JD Edwards. But where I'm going to focus, and I'm going to focus on a few of those areas that I find pretty relevant, especially if you happen to be in a manufacturing or a distribution industry where most of my depth is. But I'm also going to look at inside of the module, and in particular some features, and try to distinguish where there's some value and where there's some differences there. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about lead to order, and I'm going to apologize that my slides are not pretty. And really what I try to do here is lay over the two different products and talk about what's there. For example, to start with, third party commerce. So within JDE, if you're in World, there's really only third parties, and if you're in E1, there's customer self-service, which really isn't widely used. As we start looking at Oracle Cloud, Commerce Cloud, especially if you're in the B2C world. We also see elements of CPQ as an entry point for more of a B2B kind of portal, but the ability to extend your enterprise is certainly much stronger within the cloud. CRM, once again, this is one of those areas where World really didn't have anything, and E1 had a light concept of leads, opportunities, prospects, but by no means meaty enough for most sales organizations. And with Oracle Sales Cloud, you have all those traditional Salesforce automation, but you also have the ability to really pass back that transactional data that you need from your ERP. One of the things with JDE that always kind of drove me nuts while I was implementing is trying to do quotes for anything that wasn't a standard item. Most people ended up creating some non-stock item and calculate a price in Excel or do the whole thing in Excel. What we're seeing with the customers that Terillium's working with, that are JDE and not JDE, is that there's a true CPQ tool there. So if you have a model option business, or if you're even a contract manufacturer of chemical products and somebody wants a red label versus a green label, you can quote those things and not have to build all the item overhead underneath it or use mods. As we move over to order capture, some of the more feature to feature things that don't show up on a big splashy slide about what's different. And I'm going to take the first two chevrons together between ATP and inventory commitment. In a JDE world, most people, as they're capturing orders, it's going to check for availability. And if there's not availability, you're going to row exit off to supply and demand, and you're going to look at some things, but dates don't come back. And likewise, if you're a multi-site distribution organization, there's the inventory commitment that runs around looking for inventory, but it's not taking account some of the things that cloud with capable to promise and global order promising. In specific, in cloud, what you're seeing when you're engaging in the order entry is, you have rules. It can think about allocation in terms of customer, inventory pools, or look at what's coming in and auto date those lines. When you get into global order promising, you get into much more sophisticated topics within cloud in terms of what's the transit time from that DC to the customer? What's my transit cost? Order handling rules. JDE loves its world of every line has its own life cycle, but if you have a customer that says, I need to ship lines 3 through 5 together, it doesn't work so well in JDE. And global order promising allows the system to build rules to understand how to execute that particular customer shipment. The other really key distinction that I've noticed is really about the reshuffling. Any business, manufacturing, distribution, you allocate, things come in, things go on back order, but all of a sudden something big happens and you need to reshuffle the deck. The tools in cloud allow you to reshuffle that who's getting what product deck when you need to do that. And then JDE, that's a really painful process. Now, the next one around pricing, JDE is an excellent tool. It's been around for years. I mean, it's advanced pricing. I've rarely run across a case where we couldn't solve something with advanced pricing. In Fusion, it's not quite as good as JDE yet. In specific, the issue is really more around rebates. If it's heavy discounting and price list, and this deal gets a different payment term, those are all there. But one of the things that Angela mentioned that's astonished me, quite honestly, being an ex-JDE guy with the cloud, is how fast features are being released to shore up some of these areas that are a little bit different. Another, and this is only because it's top of mind with a customer that has a sensitive product, denied parties in JD was really tough. You generally saw third parties or modifications, third party like Amber Road or someone. Global trade management is meant to work with Oracle Fusion Cloud. So if you work in a business where you need to restrict things to California or abroad, that's an attractive feature in our mind. As I move over to shipment execution, in JDE days, the manual pick release, there's just people would either run it by status, wide open, create 75 versions for every customer, or a lot of people ended up building some sort of modified workbench so you could say, hey, what am I sending down to my warehouse to execute? If you look at that same topic in Fusion, there are fulfillment and orchestration rules, and you're seeing this a lot in this presentation, the word rules. A lot of Fusion has a rule set that defines your transaction behavior as opposed to processing options and versions and those things. And fulfillment and orchestration is another one of those where it can look at, hey, I do Home Depot on every Tuesday, regardless of the order date. First thing in the morning, I want to pick all my late orders. All of those kinds of logics you can pre-establish so that the warehouse is getting fed and things are bucketized so you can manage your warehouse. From a TMS perspective, if you happen to be in World, there's really nothing there. E1 has advanced transportation management, which does a nice job of building shipments. You could do routing and rating, but it gets a little difficult as you're trying to get into loads and multi-stop and multimodal kinds of things where Fusion is meant to work with Oracle Transportation Management, which is a true TMS, and it can go as far as optimizing and looking at a trailer and saying, here's the pallets I need to put in there, back that up into the sales order, and you drive your picking off of that. So if you're a business that's very transportation centric, That's a huge value. Likewise, you pick up some fleet scheduling, fleet management, dock scheduling, route, track, race, and pay kinds of functionality. So there's a big separation there. WMS is another one of those items where we see separation. There's a light footprint of advanced warehouse and world, but doesn't really include license plating. And when you get into E1, you do have license plating, you have directed movements, but it could be a little rigid. When you look at the cloud offering there, it's more of a best of breed WMS. And it shows up mostly in terms of how it can really deal with license plates. It shows up in distinguishing itself where if you have a highly complex facility versus a very simple, 50,000 square foot warehouse with a few racks in it, you can configure Oracle WMS in a simple facility where you would never even consider doing that with JD Edwards. You'd put in basic inventory management, and then you have differential processes. Basic inventory management is still able to be done in cloud without WMS, similar into JD Edwards. The next topic, just to spend a little bit of time on, was when it comes to inventory classification. If you look at JDE, it's branch plant, item, location, lot status code. And the issues start showing up when you start dealing with customer-owned inventory, or you deal with production versus service parts, or you deal with protected inventory that you're using for your biggest customers. Many JDE customers end up with multiple branch plants because of this. In Fusion, fundamentally, it has this sub-inventory concept, which is, think of it as a logical or physical subset of inventory within an inventory org, or branch plant in JDE speak. This allows you to create those pools of inventory and dedicate where those get used or not used. Another great example of this is when you have like a primary good and then a secondary that's maybe reworked, that rework can go to only certain places, like odd lots or something like that. Most JDE customers start splitting that stuff out by creating more items, and then the item overhead starts creeping in. Some other areas, manufacturing and planning. I'll pick up a pace a little bit because I'm running a bit behind. So JD Edwards, you're generally dealing with a third-party product lifecycle management, like a Windchill, or you've built mods to do a workflow. Cloud has an entire PLM suite that can go from idea to commercialization. And if that's too much for you, there's a product data hub, which is meant to deal with all the attribution and the workflow, and also meant to feed multiple other systems. When I start looking at demand management, and this was mentioned earlier, JD Edwards is pretty basic. It's 12 formulas. It's kind of hard to aggregate the data. It's kind of hard to change anything there. Most people do forecasting outside of JD and shove it into the system 34 tables. When you start getting into cloud, you've got a robust mantra-based demand management system with S&OP. And the big lifts there really come around variable safety stock. Always something was hard to deal with in JDE. What if type models, comparison kind of models, change tracking and collaboration. MRP, another area. JDE MRP is rock solid. It kicks out messages. However, not most visible. And when you look at supply planning in the cloud, again, you get this concept of being able to do dual plans, what ifs, a portal for your supplier to consume what their long-term forecasts, so you're not dealing with EDI, spreadsheets. And another really nice feature is actually a run out date. So if you're ever going from one rev to the other, or one SKU to the other, always an issue within JD that the cloud supply planning picks up. Process manufacturing. It's an area of JD, it's still stronger. Process is evolving very quickly in cloud. The differential there is really percentage bills at this point, but cloud does deal with co-products, byproducts, and those kinds of things. The last topic on this slide, to think about is an SCM project is essentially when you're trying to tag inventory and transactions to a specific project. You see this a lot in equipment kind of companies. JD had a concept in E1, which wasn't in World, about production number that really wasn't all that well used because it was highly painful to use it. There is a complete solution for that kind of business within cloud with SCM projects that allows you to tie your purchase orders, your work orders, your sales orders, labor, inventory, all back to a project, and that project owns that inventory. So the classic, I buy a motor and it's for this unit. Well, unit 2 uses the same motor. I'm going to go steal this one. No, you can't. Now you can reallocate it, but it reserves out that motor because it was purchased for unit 1. Procurement. This is probably one of the areas you see the most separation between the products. Portal. And once again, this is an area where World really doesn't have anything. And if you're in E1, you had Supplier SelfService, another very rarely used module. You see a lot of third parties. Fusion has a full-blown supplier portal. Similar on qualification tools for new suppliers. There's really nothing in World whatsoever that lives within the system. And E1 had a part of an RFQ process that was out there and lives. Fusion Cloud really pulls that whole process together from a supplier registering to you qualifying them with a series of questions to sourcing events where the system is collecting that information for you and feeding it into the transactions as you say, this is my supplier for this kind of part and this is what I'm going to pay in collaboration. Another area, approval routing. So always struggled with in JD Edwards. You can do RECs, you can do POs, but fundamentally tied to order type and loosely line type GL class code. But when you get into cloud, first of all, the points of approval between requisition, PO, and AP are different, but it's a far more elaborate structure, and that allows whether you want sequential, whether you want a voting approval, parallel. It has the ability to group products together. So if you're in IT, all the IT MRO items go to Bob, but if you're doing safety supplies, they go to Charlie. It can deal with all of those things and user groups. It also does a nice, much better job of notifying escalation and reminders to make sure people are moving on that information quickly. Similar theme, indirect procurement in JDE is pretty much always, I'm going to enter a standard purchase order, look up some fake items or create some GL class codes, and I'm going to key it in. It's not the most user-friendly. It's not catalog. It's not, clicking. It's never something really you ever see wide swaths of end users create a PR for or purchase requisition in cloud speak. Cloud does a very nice job of a streamlined indirect procurement process that captures that information from the user so it's not being written down, sent, email, routes it through its approvals, but it also goes into receiving it. And JDE, you have to use like the same receiving application that you're using for direct materials showing out a warehouse dock, where if you're receiving a service or an office supply, they're going to completely different places. So punch outs are another thing that really shows up on this list. I'm going to round out with finance, which I'll admit is not my strongest subject, but there's a few things to be very aware of. JD Edwards, somewhat limited from a chart of accounts segment. You've got your business unit, object, subsidiary, and subledger. And most people in JD world use a ton of cat codes to be able to repivot data for financial reporting. Cloud's chart of accounts is very, very configurable. You could have up to 30 segments, but that's way, way overkill. Also, the whole org structure is more elaborate than the JD Edwards simple company business unit. You get into more cost orgs and inventory orgs, but ultimately this means for people, you have a better chart of accounts with more attributes that you can drive better reporting off of. AP automation, once again, been a hole in JD Edwards. There's a ton of third-party players out there for both World and E1. There's no need to look for that in cloud because that's native within the product. Angela did a really good job of covering my next one, financial planning, budgeting tools. We see a lot of JDE customers starting by putting that over top. The note within Oracle, if you're running Oracle financials and Fusion, that's already integrated. So both consolidation and planning and budgeting. Fixed assets, JD Edwards rock solid. You see a lot of people running Sage. Generally, the reason people aren't using JDE is they have tend to have a lot of either construction and process or project assets or leased assets, which that functionality is much better available in cloud. And the last point, JDE reporting is all two-dimensional across the system. It's all the financials within cloud is based on the Essbase or old Hyperion cube. So you've got that three-dimensional reporting that works with a more elaborate chart of accounts that you can use to and SmartView and some of the tools that Brian's going to talk about here in a few minutes. So with that, I know I went through quite a bit. I'm going to hand this over to Brian Surface, and he's going to take us through some of the technical tools. You're on mute, Brian.
Yep, I got it. Thanks, Shane. So when it comes to the technical tools, when we're dealing with cloud, you're going to get a more modern experience than you would with JD Edwards and World. A modern experience and more modern features. A lot of the tools become more visual-based tools. There's a lot of low-code, no-code opportunities, as well as you get some certified recipes and content along with some pre-built connectors that can help you with rapid development and just get you up and running much quicker than with the tools for the other ERPs. The other thing with the tool set is it's upgrade safe. So where you're dealing with custom code, that's kind of making you stay behind and not upgrade with JDE and World. In the cloud, basically everything is kind of a layer on top, or it's connected in a way that it's not going to impact your upgrade going forward. When it comes to reporting, you have a couple options. They're all embedded within the software. And basically it's kind of the same back end of JD Edwards, where you can join tables and there's pre-built data catalogs and such that can get you going. But for these tools, they give you more of a, I guess, a better look and feel for your end user community. It helps get the data to them quicker through dashboards and some of this analysis, and you're also able to kind of, pretty it up with the reports on the reporting side. As far as financial reporting goes, kind of the same thing, but you do have, once again, multiple options. A lot of them can be formula driven. You have the opportunity to do drill downs, add charts and graphs, and you also have the multiple outputs. These tools also interact with some common tools such as Excel that your end user community are familiar with, so there's less of a learning curve on these. When it comes to integration, this is becoming extremely similar area to at least JD Edwards when it comes to Orchestrator. The Oracle Integration Cloud offers you a very visual experience when it comes to development. You can almost build a flow or an orchestration for your integration. A lot of drag and drop. The mappings actually have a recommendation feature. So if you've done a mapping on other integrations, it'll actually understand that, and you can hit recommend and it'll actually automatically map it to you, so you're not rebuilding the wheel. These also leverage APIs, REST APIs, SOAP APIs that are out of the box in the public cloud, and also business events, which gives you an opportunity for real-time integrations, whether you're going from cloud to cloud or JD Edwards or cloud to JD Edwards. And once again, these APIs and business events really speed up the process and slim down the development time and connectivity time when it comes to integrations. Once again, there's also the pre-built adapters. As you can see here, there's a ton of pre-built adapters out there to connect to any third-party system or cloud or even JD Edwards. There's also pre-built certified recipes from Oracle. Now these can be used out of the box. You can just set them up and go, or you can use them as the building block for an integration that may not come in a recipe. So once again, you're scaling down your development time. You're getting the 10%, the 60% out of the box, and then you just configure the rest or modify the rest. You also have the marketplace where vendors are consistently building new apps and new integrations that you can basically, whether you purchase it or some of them are free, you can basically drop them into Integration Cloud and connect them and go. When it comes to data conversion, it's a very similar process in cloud to JD Edwards. You basically have a file-based data import, which is basically an Excel spreadsheet with some macros, and it gives you the ability to load and then just upload into the system. Is very similar to a Z file process as we're familiar with in World and JD Edwards. And you already have the pre-built data sets. And you can choose to do these manually. You can also integrate them and have them scheduled. As far as enhancement goes, and I think there's kind of a myth that you cannot modify cloud. And it may have been in the past, but as they're developing these tools and developing these features for us, and it's very similar to what Shane said about the application features and functionality. There's something new, it seems like every month, coming with these features, and they're actually embedding them more and more within the Oracle apps. So you have the ability to enhance the screen or personalize the screen with a click of the button instead of having to use a third-party tool. You're able to do the personalizations, and there's also a standalone feature that allows you to create new applications, or you can create kind of a component of an app and embed it in there. And as you can see here, it really gives you the ability to give your applications a look and feel that might be more driven towards your company culture or more driven towards your end user community requirements. So it's not just grids and stuff like that all the time. You can actually put pictures and make them look almost like a web page at times. And then finally, when it comes to forms, it's BI Publisher. So the JD Edwards community is very familiar with BI Publisher. It's basically the same BI Publisher. It actually has a few additional features that we use in cloud, but this gives you the ability, once again, you can create customer-facing documents, you can use special fonts and images, and you have multiple output options. So with that said, I'm going to turn it back over to Shane, and he is going to talk about some customer stories.
Thanks, Brian. So just a couple quick customer stories. The first one we wanted to talk about is a company called Eco Energy. Can you advance the slide, Brian?
It's going.
There we go. So Eco Energy is a very large organization in terms of revenue in transactions. They buy and sell natural gas and ethanol. So they were at a JDE 9.1, and they were looking at an upgrade and which direction that they wanted to go. And they chose down to go the cloud route. And really from a long-term sustainability, from a business process perspective, the AR OCR functionality really led to that with a positive TCO as they looked at their options. So this is the classic example of a lot of organizations out there that are running JDE Finance, whether that's World or E1, and they're connected to a number of, we'll call it transactional systems. So they're trading. JDE is not a trading system, nor is cloud, but there's specific purpose-built applications that we need to feed in financials, and the web service calls and the APIs made that significantly easier of an effort than it would have been with something like JD Edwards. So the next one, and this is going into everyone's path to the cloud is very different. AZTEC is a large publicly traded company. Their main equipment is from rock to road. So anything that chews up a road, makes asphalt, makes concrete, and puts those things back down. So they're making heavy equipment. Grown through acquisition, they found themselves with nine different ERPs and 16 versions. And on comes an acquisition. And that would have added a +1 to those numbers. So this was a chance to, instead of add another ERP to the stack, make a choice for the future, which was Oracle Cloud, bring that acquisition up, and now they've got a rollout strategy to bring the rest of the sites into cloud over time. So that's the site by site. If you're in a disaggregated, what we see a lot of that I don't have a slide up for is we have a lot of customers that are JDE right now, 2 or 3 I can think of, that are taking a hard look at supply and demand planning and leaving their JDE core. We have a couple JDE customers that are eventually going to replace the core, but they're starting with things on the edges. EPM, they're adding, for example, OTM to their mix to give better visibility or better execution from a shipment perspective. So the point here is, if you want to go up a slide, and I'll turn it over to Matt, everybody's path so far has been different. My career in JD Edwards, as we were taking BPIX and replacing with JD Edwards, it was always pretty much a big bang, and there isn't a single solution path that makes sense for everyone. So Matt, you want to explain the Pathfinder assessment?
Sure, thanks, Shane. So Pathfinder is an assessment approach that we came up with, which is a series of workshops to really help customers define their journey to the cloud. So we're going to come in, we're going to focus on really those problem areas, and then really dig into where's the business value to justify doing anything at all. So that's part of the deliverable, is really identifying the value, and then the deployment approaches, right? As Shane talked about, there's lots of different ways to get there, but you need to personalize that and define it for your business. And the last piece is, right, we want to talk a little bit about change management. So part of it's change management on the business side. The other piece is, change management within the IT organization itself, because it is a new technology stack. So we want to make sure that those folks are comfortable and brought up to speed with, the new tools. And what you'll see there is, Pathfinder at Terillium. If you shoot an email off to that email, we can start to talk about what those workshops look like. There is no cost to the customer for that, to go through those assessments. So we'd be more than happy to talk to you folks about, what that might look for your organization. And then I think, Brianna, do we have any questions here for the last couple of minutes?
We sure do. Okay, so the first one we got is, what's the migration path that Oracle provides from JDE on-prem to Oracle Fusion Cloud ERP application?
So I'll start that one. So one of the things that we're working with Oracle on right now is data conversion tools for both E1 and World to get the data into a cloud format. Now, obviously, there's still some level of mapping. Everyone uses fields slightly differently, but we're trying to at least, negate the data conversion curve. From a configuration perspective, we encourage kind of starting not with your JDE processes, but with the Oracle leading practices, which are very well documented. They're also publicly accessible, as a starting point, because the systems are fundamentally different in how they try to drive a transaction. As I mentioned earlier, JD Edwards versions and processing options and switches, cloud is data rule centric. So that allows you to articulate and think and put your business rules in the cloud to guide how a transaction moves through the system.
Alrighty, then we're going to go to the next one, which is real estate management on the Fusion roadmap? If so, what is the timing?
Angela, do you know the answer to that one? We'll have to follow up on that one as a follow-up.
We lost our audio. Yeah.
Oh no.
There we go. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay. Now, now I can answer. So real estate management is not on the roadmap for Fusion currently. So if you are a real estate customer and interested in, something related to SaaS, if you want to continue to use that real estate functionality, you're going to have to use that within JD Edwards, but there's options for you. I mean, you can still implement like EPM or some other modules within Fusion. It's just that the real estate management is not currently planned for Fusion.
Okay, and then next up we have, is Visualizer the same as Oracle Experience Cloud?
I think the question's probably, is Visual Builder the same as Oracle Experience Cloud? If that's the question, they're different things. Content and Experience Cloud is a separate product around content management, and Visual Builder is a tool that we can utilize within cloud to customize or personalize, better put, some of the screens and how a user would interact with the product.
Okay, and then we got two more. So what would be the primary driver in choosing between Oracle Cloud Apps versus NetSuite?
That's a good question. I can get, or Matt, I'll let you.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, I mean, one of those drivers is going to be industry, right? So NetSuite's not known to be the strongest in a manufacturing environment, right? For example, engineered order, whereas cloud knocks it out of the park there. So we would look by industry is probably the first area we would look at, in complexity of the business, right? Some pricing rules that NetSuite may not be able to hold up to some of the pricing needs, especially coming from a JD Edwards environment. Or two areas I can think of, but we'd want to dig into the industry and then really the footprint, and we could define which one's the best fit.
Okay, I lied. Now we have 2 more questions. Okay, so is this totally separate from OCI?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the final one is blend/grower on the roadmap for Fusion?
Asking all the hard questions. No, it's not on the roadmap either. So it's a similar answer where there are still things you could take advantage of, within cloud, but it would be on the edge. If you're using blend and grower management, those are still, part of the core of what you need. And so you would continue to run that on the JD Edwards side.
Oops. Okay, now I have one more. When considering a big bang versus a phased rollout of cloud, what should you consider is the best decision process?
Generally, what I start with there is what is in, if it's like JDE to cloud, what is running in JDE today? Because that kind of defines a lot of times the bare basic box or what's in your ERP. Second, I typically look at, are there radically distinct divisions from a phasing perspective, or is it a multi-site warehouse organization that's selling the same product that's heavily inventory dependent? If something has to all stay together, then you're looking at, well, what is that core? And then you'll later come around with things around it, as opposed to if somebody's highly decentralized and separated, then you typically can look at a line of business. And then there are some companies that look at process by process, depending on your as-is system environment. So it's once again one of those things that we look at as part of the Pathfinder assessment on what do you have, where's the business priority, and help put out those options of you can go down path A, B, C, or D, and here's why we think path B and C are a better choice. So unfortunately, there's not a linear answer there, but those are some of the dynamics we look at.
Okay, well, that's all of the questions. So if nobody else has anything else to say, I don't know if you 4 have anything else to say to close it out, but I'll leave it up to you guys.
I'd just like to thank everybody for their participation and time, and we certainly appreciate it. And if there are questions, pathfinder@trillium.com, and we can help provide information and more personalized content for sure.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much.